Well, hello, everyone, and I want to welcome you to a live edition of the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner. And of course, I'm your host, retired Army First Sergeant Paul Holbert. And we are going to do something tonight that I haven't done in quite some time. I'm going to do a solo show tonight, so you're going to be stuck listening and looking at me all night. So hopefully none of you are going to run away real quick. Stick around because I think we've got a pretty interesting show for you, and we'll get into that in just a moment. First, of course, as always, I want to thank our sponsors, Nationwide IT Services. As you know, NIS, for those of you that watch, is a service-disabled veteran-owned small business owned by retired Army Warrant Officer C.K. Park. C.K. and his crew, they have offices in various locations around the United States, and they are there to help your business with all of your business and professional needs. So if there's something they can help you with, whether it's IT, security, training, performance development, professional management, give him a call, and he's got the staff that can help you out. I also want to thank Hill and Ponton, PA, Veterans Disability Attorneys. Hill and Ponton, folks, has been in business for over 30 years. Their main goal and their main line of business there is to help veterans and their families navigate the VA and all the requirements to help you get those benefits that you have earned. So if you have struggled, you're having a hard time, go to their website, take a look at it. They also have some free webinars you can check out. I'm sure they'll be helpful. Find out if they can help you. And if there's something you need, contact them. And I guarantee you they'll be able to help you. We also want to reach out to Heroes Bridge, give them a shout out. Heroes Bridge here in Warrenton, Virginia is a veteran service organization designed to assist veterans, especially over the age of 65, us older veterans. As we get older, it at least seems like we need more help than some of the other folks. May not always be the case, but that sometimes the case is what it is. They concentrate on helping older veterans, whether it's assistance with groceries, rides to doctor's appointments, battle buddy programs, whatever it is. They're also right now fundraising to build a brand new 52 cabin community to house homeless veterans and their families. So take a look at their website, heroesbridge.org. See if there's something you can do to help them, or reach out and see if you can give them a hand. I also want to thank Reese Across America. We've had a wonderful broadcast agreement with Reese Across America, a partnership. WGSN now, my show can now be heard on the Reese Across America radio network every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern time by going to reaseacrossamerica.org and selecting the radio network icon. You can push that and it'll take it to you automatically. You can also go to Spotify, iHeartRadio, or iTunes and search for Reese, and you'll be able to find it there. So we are happy to be participating with them in our broadcast agreement. All right, so I want to get into tonight's topic, and you might find this a little bit interesting. And you look at it and say, "Wow, this guy's going to talk about veterans burial tips and benefits." Seems like a morbid subject to talk about, but you know what? I got to tell you, folks, it's a very real subject. It can hit you when you least expect it, and that's why I decided I wanted to make sure that we talk about this and that I share some of this information with you. And there's a lot of information for both veterans and their families on the VA website. I'll be giving you some of the websites throughout this, but hopefully by the time we're done, it'll answer some questions. And I have to tell you, you may ask me why. Say, Paul, why would you do a show like this? Well, for several reasons. Number one, I do some battle buddy volunteer reach out for Heroes Bridge. I enjoy doing it. I reach out to other veterans. Some of them are my age, some of them are older, but a lot of them are shut in. They live by themselves. And in talking with a number of them, I started finding out how very little some of them knew about the benefits and things that they were entitled to as veterans, and especially the burial benefits. So what I usually do in that case is I will link them up with our veterans representative at Heroes Bridge, and she knows all the ins and outs. Julie will usually give them a call and talk with them and spend time explaining to them a lot of the things that they're not aware of. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to reach out to our audience as a whole and talk about this. A couple other reasons are more personal in nature. More recently, this past summer, we had to deal with the death of my mother-in-law, and it was somewhat unexpected. And I saw what my wife and her siblings, her family went through, having to jump through hoops all of a sudden because they lost their mother on such short notice. Even though it was due to an illness, it was unexpected that she deteriorated her condition that quickly. And we were fortunate that we had gone out and actually had gotten her parents to select 2 burial plots a couple of years ago. So they were that far ahead with that, but no one had thought about arrangements and their culture with some of the requirements. And I saw what they went through trying to deal with that as a family, and the cost, the extra cost that was involved because of some of the requirements. And it got to be very expensive. It was very difficult on the family. The death of my own father back when I was young, I still remember what my mom went through because he was killed in an Army training accident. And it was completely unexpected. My mom later shared with me what she went through too, because I was very young, and how difficult it was for her trying to make decisions about burial, about all kinds of things, with 2 young kids and a husband that she had just lost. So it was very taxing, very difficult. And then just more recently, over the holidays, the loss of my mother, who, God bless her, was 89 years old. And even though it was somewhat expected, didn't make it any easier. And the difference there was my mom had actually already prearranged her burial, had prepaid it. And my brother and I had a much easier time dealing with that during, the loss of her. So that's kind of what I started looking at. And there's so many different circumstances that I thought, this would be something good to talk about. And I can't stress it enough. When you look at dealing with that as a veteran and you've got family out there, you need to think about preparation. You can't do enough preparation. And there's a lot of things you can do as a veteran to help prepare not only for your own funeral and interment, but to help your family. So that's why I wanted to do this. And when we talk about preparation, I talk about keeping your ducks in a row. And naturally, one of the first things as a veteran, if you're going to be buried and you want any type of veterans recognition or benefits, you've got to make sure that you've got a copy of your DD-214. And when I say your DD-214, it's got to be, I think it's either the copy number 4, the original, or certified copies that you can get. So I highly recommend, I put this out on the show before, there's a website that you can go to, the National Archives, by visiting the archives.gov and then Veterans Military Service Records. So keep that in mind, veterans.gov, military service records at the National Archive. You can go on there and request, and they will send you 2 certified copies of your DD-214 as a veteran. Now, naturally, you're going to have to provide them with proof of your identity when you go on there to do this, naturally, but they can do it. I did it, even though I had about 6 copies, my original and 5 certified. I went on there just to maintain a couple of extra copies just in case. So I gave it a try on the website. It worked perfectly. It only took a few weeks, and I got those certified copies of my DD-214 in the mail. So highly suggest that you do that. You're going to need that DD-214. Another thing that you can do as a veteran, if you have any interest at all of being buried in a national cemetery, whether it's Arlington Cemetery or one of the other many national cemeteries where veterans are buried. My mom was just buried next to my stepfather, who was a retired Navy veteran. He died a few years ago of cancer, so he was buried in the Veterans Cemetery in Biloxi, Mississippi. she was also buried next to him. So these are things that you need to keep in mind. So pre-approval, you can get pre-approval for either yourself or a family member so that they can be buried with you and you can be buried, and it'll streamline the process. There's the website up there, pre-approval for burial. You can go on there, folks. You can click on there. They're going to ask you for some information. If you're a veteran and you already have information in the VA system, they're going to ask you to verify that. They may ask you a couple other things too, just to re-verify your identity. But they're going to ask you, they're going to pull up your information, ask you to verify it, verify your identity again. And you can apply for pre-approval to be buried either at Arlington National Cemetery or one of the other many VA national cemeteries around the United States. Because if you don't, what happens is that your family then has to go to the VA or to that particular cemetery and then apply for you to be buried there. And sometimes the process can take a little while to be verified, to be approved, and that can hold up things. And all this while you as a veteran may be laying somewhere waiting to be interred, and your family's having to wait for approval to get you into a VA cemetery. You can avoid that. Your DD-214 first. Go on there and get pre-approval if you want to be buried in a national cemetery. It's easy to do. It's there to do. The websites are right there. And yes, thank you. There is the website for your free DD-214 online. Check it out. Trust me, it works. I've got mine. The pre-approval also works. It just so happens that I went and applied to be buried in Arlington National Cemetery, and we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. Since I'm a retired military member, I applied to get pre-approval for Arlington, did my application to the VA. It only took them about a week because I was already in their system. I got an approval email back, and then shortly after that, I got a letter in the mail saying that I had been pre-approved for burial there, and I put that in my paperwork with all of my other DD-214 and other things for my spouse and my family. So it'll save a lot of time. Now, when you start thinking about, do I want to be buried in a VA or military cemetery? What do I have to do? Well, it's a little different depending on where you want to be buried. And there are some criteria. So when you think about where you want to be buried, who's eligible for burial in a VA national cemetery? So it can be a veteran, it can be an active service member who's killed, their spouses, and for young children of veterans, there are some circumstances where they can be buried there as well. You can get more information by going to the VA website and taking a look. They have some specifics under each category. Too many for me to try to go through here, but you can take a look. Know that it's worth your time. There it is, burial benefits and information at the va.gov, burials and memorials. Go in there and take a look at it. So when you start looking at who's eligible, at least at a minimum, one of the following criteria must be true. Okay, the person qualifying for burial is a veteran who did not receive a dishonorable discharge, or the person qualifying for the benefits is a service member who died while on active duty training, or inactive duty training. So if you were killed in training or you died on active duty, you will meet the criteria. The other criteria is the spouse or surviving spouse of a veteran, even if they remarried, upon their death can be buried with that veteran. Now that seems a little weird, doesn't it? I mean, if your spouse remarries, chances are they're going to want to bury her next to her new family or a new spouse. But again, the possibility is there. The person qualifying is a minor child of a veteran, even if the veteran died first. So there are some circumstances, like I said, that not only you as a veteran, your spouse or surviving spouse or your minor children can possibly be buried with you in a VA cemetery or national cemetery. So go on there and take a look at the burial benefits and information. Make sure you read through some of the specifics so you know exactly what's what, and that way there's no confusion. But it's fairly cut and dry. So I recommend you folks to go on there and take a look, see what you think will work for you. And, like I said, it's important. It's important because when the time comes, it doesn't matter whether you've been married for a short period of time or whether you're not married and you've only been in the military for a short period of time. If something happens to you as a veteran or an active service member, your family is going to be going through so many things, and you want to try and make this transition as easy for them as you possibly can. And I don't know how many of you have had an opportunity to watch that movie, Taking Chance. Excellent movie, true story, starring Kevin Bacon, about a Marine officer that escorts a young Marine who was killed in Afghanistan home for his burial. And it'll give you a chance to kind of see. I'm highly encouraged, if you get a chance, watch that movie. I really think you will like it. It'll give you a chance to see not only what happens when someone is killed like that, a soldier dies, and granted, if it's a retired veteran, it's a little different, but it'll give you a chance to see the process, what happens, what the family goes through, what those honors look like. So I strongly encourage you, go take a look at Taking Chance if you get the opportunity. I think it will make a big difference for you and give you an insight into what your family will be dealing with once that happens. All right, so we are going to take just a short break, and we're going to recognize our sponsors again because we're so happy to have them. And when we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the burial, and we're going to talk about what it takes to be buried in some of the various cemeteries, whether it's Arlington Cemetery versus the other VA national cemeteries, and obtaining and using VA benefits being buried in a private or a civilian cemetery. So we'll be right back after we hear from our sponsors.
Gave everything you had. You sacrificed your comfort, your peace, and sometimes even your well-being. Over 3 decades, Hill & Ponton has helped to be a guiding light for veterans seeking their rightful disability benefits. When our heroes are in need, we are not just lawyers. We're an ally, a team who understands the struggles you faced. If you're a veteran seeking the benefits you deserve, let us stand with you on this journey, because every battle deserves a hero, and no hero should fight alone.
Welcome to NewStreamingNetwork.com. The future of streaming is here. Looking for bold, diverse, and engaging content? New Streaming Network brings you the best in TV, podcast, and radio, all in one place. From entertainment and lifestyle to business and inspiration, we're streaming what matters most to you anytime, anywhere, on Roku, multiple TV stations, and numerous podcast platforms, and WGSN-DB Going Solo Network Radio. Watch, listen, and connect. Join millions already tuning in. Visit NewStreamingNetwork.com. Start streaming today.
All right, welcome back, everyone. And again, I want to welcome you back to our show this evening. We are doing a solo with me and the camera, but we are talking about a very, very serious subject, one that I think is important everyone needs to be aware of: veterans burial tips and benefits. And before the break, I kind of took you through some of the requirements and who's eligible in terms of being buried in one of our VA national cemeteries or Arlington National Cemetery. So now I'd like to go a little further and break this down. So let's say that you are a veteran and you would be interested in being buried in one of our VA national cemeteries, or in, for instance, let's say Arlington National Cemetery. And I don't know how many of you have had the opportunity to actually travel to Arlington Cemetery and walk the grounds. It's so incredible. I've been over there 3 times myself for different reasons. Took my grandson on one of the visits, and to see the history there, to walk through that hollow ground and look at the tombstones, for me, it really brings something to heart. The other thing about it that's so memorable is to watch the changing of the guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. It's incredible, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen that on video on YouTube and other shows. It's really incredible, and it's such a beautiful place. And there are a lot of veterans who do want to be buried there, and of course, naturally, there's a lot of veterans who are buried there prematurely because they were killed serving the country, not necessarily by choice, of course, but they're being honored anyway. So what happens if it comes down to it and you're a veteran and you want to find out, first of all, what does it take for me to be buried in either Arlington Cemetery or one of the other VA national cemeteries? So let's take a look at this. And the requirements can vary, but I will tell you that normally to be buried in Arlington Cemetery, especially, normally you're going to have to be killed on duty, or something of that nature. You're either going to be retired, killed in action on duty, above a certain rank, especially general officers. Those public figures who served in the military before, they are eligible for burial there. So it can go by rank, and of course, Medal of Honor winners. If you're not retired, Arlington, you can go look at their website, and I'm going to give you a number, and I'm not sure if I gave it to my studio, so I'm hoping that maybe Cece can catch it for me if she doesn't have it, and maybe put it across the screen. But the number is 877-907-8585. So that's 877-907-8585. And that is the number to the customer care office at Arlington National Cemetery. And you can always call them or check the VA. There it is. Thank you so much. And you can always call there, or you can check the website as well for more detailed information. But again, normally retired military, killed in action, Medal of Honor winners, specific ranks, public figures who served in the military, all of them are normally automatically eligible for interment in Arlington Cemetery. Now, if you're not, I believe they do have a program where you can be buried in one of the crypts for cremation. You're just not eligible for interment in the ground. So you can double check that, see what you think might work for you if you're interested in being buried in Arlington Cemetery. Again, it's a beautiful place, beautiful, beautiful grounds, very respectful, and it's a place of eternal rest that I think our veterans have rightfully earned. So what happens if you're approved to be buried there? What kind of burial benefits can you get under those circumstances? Well, if you're eligible for interment in either Arlington or one of the VA national cemeteries, here are some of the benefits that you're entitled to. And of course, a few of them may vary a little bit depending on your circumstance. But of course, you are entitled to a burial allowance for burial and funeral costs. Now, that was something that I did not realize. The VA will actually help your family cover some of the costs of your burial preparation. And the other thing is that as a surviving spouse, if you have a spouse that dies and are going to be buried in a VA cemetery, if you are their spouse of record with the VA, and it just so happens that I just verified that my wife is my spouse of record with the VA, it's important that you do that. If you haven't done it, do it. You can go to the website, just look in the search button. It'll tell you how you can do that. There's a form you can fill out. I believe you can do it electronically too, but there's a form you can fill out and send to them to make sure that your spouse is verified with the VA as your current relative, as your current spouse. If you are the surviving spouse of a veteran who dies, you will not have to apply for that VA allowance. The interesting thing is that if you are the spouse of record, they will automatically process and pay you that internment allowance from the VA. So it's definitely worth your time and effort to make sure that you are already registered with the VA. If not, then you're going to have to apply for that separately, and it's going to take a little longer to process, of course. But allowance for burial and funeral costs, a VA plot, or an internment allowance for the cost of a plot for you to be buried in. That's another important thing, because guys, if you've looked at funeral costs, I can tell you just from recently, my experience with my mother's own funeral, had she not prepared her own funeral arrangements and taken care of it ahead of time, we were talking $8,000 to $10,000. And that would be for everything. So we know that funerals are expensive. So by doing this kind of stuff ahead of time, it takes so much of a burden off those that you leave behind. So you would get an internment allowance for a plot or an internment site. VA transportation for the cost of transporting the veterans' remains to their final resting place. So, if you live 100 miles from the VA cemetery where you're approved to be buried in, they will assist with the cost in transporting your remains for burial to that burial site. Veterans receiving VA disability or compensation, and veterans dying of disability related to issues along with other certain criteria, there are some additional benefits that you can get. Now, part of that will be determined at the time that you die. And let me kind of share one of those that's more recent. It's only maybe a little over a year old now, maybe going on close to 2 years. But now, folks, if you are the spouse of a disabled veteran, and especially a veteran whose disability has reached a high number and even 100%, as a surviving spouse, you can now go to the VA when you report that veteran's death to the VA disability. You can ask them to help you determine whether or not you are eligible for a portion of that disabled veteran's disability pension. Before, there wasn't like that. It didn't happen. Once you were dead, your disability pension went away. Now there is a program as a surviving spouse where you can go to the VA. They can help you figure out whether you're eligible. And of course, a lot of it's going to be depending on your financial situation and those types of things. But you have a chance to be eligible to continue a portion of your deceased spouse's disability pension through the VA. So that's something new to think about. These are all things that are important to look up. You can find more about that on the VA website as well, just by searching through burial tips and benefits. Again, you can go on there and also search about veterans disability survivor pensions. It will also pull it up, but you need to take a look at it. It's important. And as I mentioned, you do not need to apply if you're already listed as a surviving spouse with the VA. So you can see the benefits are really, really there. The assistance to your family is really there. So this is in your best interest as veterans to ensure that all this paperwork is updated, these processes are examined to see what can help your family in the event that, your death is, whether it's planned, whether it's untimely, whether you're ill and your family kind of expects it. When that happens, you want to be ready and you want to make it as easy as possible on your family. Now, what about those of you who don't want to be buried in one of the VA national cemeteries? What about if you want to be buried in a private cemetery, whether it's a community cemetery, a religious cemetery, a family cemetery? The VA has made allowances for that as well. So there are memorial benefits at private cemeteries that you are also entitled to. Again, you have to be in touch with the VA and make sure that you file for this. So what are some of those things? Now, of course, they're different for those of you that are eligible to be buried in a VA National Cemetery. Because in the VA National Cemetery, and let me just step back for a second, the VA National Cemetery, you're going to get those military honors and everything that goes with it. But you're going to get much of that in the private cemeteries as well. So let me just share with you, for those of you that are going to plan to be buried in a family or private cemetery somewhere in your hometown, you can get in touch with the VA, and the VA will help you with either a headstone or a ground marker to mark your resting place. Either one of those, there's a small headstone they will provide, or there's a ground marker. I remember when my father was killed back in 1964. I was 5 at the time. And at that time, since he was on active duty, but he chose to be buried in a cemetery there in our hometown, all the VA provided at that time was a ground marker, a brass ground marker that identified his resting place. My wife and I, years later, we actually had a stone placed on his burial site to mark it, and the ground marker the VA put in place is still there. So there are actually 2 markers. So you're going to get a headstone or a marker from the VA, a flag, a burial flag that comes with it. And of course, normally what happens, you're going to get the honors that all veterans get. They'll provide pallbearers to assist with moving the veteran to the graveside, a firing party, normally the 21 gun salute, a firing party. And a lot of times those are done by military units in your hometown or around that area. I pulled funeral detail a number of times, especially out of Fort Carson, Colorado at the VA cemetery and a couple of private cemeteries as well. So you will have a firing party, a bugler to play taps, and a flag presentation by a military representative. And folks, I got to tell you, if you've ever been to a military funeral and you've seen how they do these, or whether you watch it on YouTube, if you haven't, I encourage you to go watch a couple of them. And there's nothing more solemn than that when that flag bearer takes that folded flag and presents that flag to the family. It is such a solemn moment. And it's something that I'll never forget doing during my military career, as I did that for a number of funerals myself for veterans. So you're going to be able to get all of this, even being buried in a private cemetery or a family cemetery. Headstone or a marker. You're also going to get a certificate, a memorial certificate, VA letter, a veteran's legacy page by the VA. That will have your loved one's information on it, and the honors of the pallbearers, firing party, the bugler, and the flag presentation, and of course the flag to keep that was draped over your veteran's coffin. So as you can see, there are so many things that as a veteran you are entitled to when you pass away. And if you weren't aware of it, this is something that you really, really need to be aware of and look at and investigate and try to make the transition as easy for your family as possible. Because when that time comes, they're going to be thinking about so many other things. and not having to deal with all of the trauma that goes along with the passing of a loved one, and then dealing with all kinds of paperwork and coordination. The easier you can make on them, the better it's going to be. So I encourage you, all of you out there listening to the show, go to the VA website, take a look at what's available there, the burial information and benefits website. Take a look at it, see what you can do. Do as much as you can ahead of time, whether it's making sure you have those DD-214s, getting pre-approval if you want to be buried in one of our national cemeteries, and just making sure that you make that transition for your loved ones as smooth and easy as possible. All right. So before we close our show tonight, I do want to share a piece of information with you, as I always do with our post-show information, providing information and tips and what's available to those of you out there. So if you go to our VA website, there it is, the IBM Skillsbuild program for veterans. And there's our website. It's kind of long, but you can take a snapshot of the screen and then go and find it. The IBM Skillsbuild program, it's also for family members. They have over 1,000 free online courses that you can sign up to take. And folks, these are skill building courses, skill development, management related courses, artificial intelligence. There are over 1,000 of them, and you can go as a veteran to sign up to take those free courses, those you and your family. So I encourage you to take a look at that. Again, there's the information on the screen. This is something you've earned. So again, another one of those benefits I encourage you to share with others and take advantage of. All right. I want to thank all of you for joining me this evening. I realize this was, again, a little different. First time I've done a solo show in quite some time. I do promise that we will have another guest returning on our next show, so you won't have to sit and listen to me for the whole time, although I hope this wasn't too bad for you. And as always, for all of our veterans out there, we want to thank you for your service and for your family for supporting those veterans. And we hope that you continue to live a productive life and a happy life, whether you're still on active duty or you're retired or just a veteran. We wish you the best. Well, thank you for watching the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner on the new streaming network, and we hope to see you on our next show.